The HOA president stood in my driveway at 6 a.m., clipboard in hand, writing me a $500 fine for tire dumping. But those weren't just any tires, and I wasn't about to roll over. I'm Marcus Torres. I had barely finished my morning coffee when I found the violation notice superglued to my garage door. The sticky residue pulled paint right off when I tried to remove it. The charge was unsightly automotive waste storage for 12 vintage racing tires that belonged to my late father. Veronica Hartwell, our self-appointed neighborhood dictator, had been jogging past in her designer tennis whites when she spotted them. She decided my modest house was ruining her perfect kingdom. Those tires weren't garbage. They were worth $15,000 to collectors, and I planned to sell them to help with my mother's memory care. But in Veronica's world, anything connected to blue-collar work threatened her precious property values. She had already shown her true colors. Miguel got fined $300 for parking his landscaping truck in his own driveway, while her friend Janet parked a 30-foot RV without a single citation. Dorothy, a 78-year-old widow, received a $200 fine for 4 garden gnomes her late husband had given her. The discrimination was blatant, but Veronica's handwritten note on my fine really twisted the knife. Community standards exist for everyone's benefit. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable in a less exclusive neighborhood. I stood there in the desert morning heat, paint chips still stuck to my fingers, feeling that cold, calculating calm I used to get during 30 years fixing fighter jets in the Air Force. Every regulation has loopholes. Every tyrant has weaknesses. Veronica had just picked on the wrong person. 2 days later, I sat in her $600,000 living room for the monthly HOA board meeting. I came prepared with professional appraisals showing the tire's value and historical significance. Veronica barely glanced at them before upholding the fine and adding a $50 administrative fee for my frivolous appeal. Instead of arguing, I smiled and thanked her for clarifying the HOA's position. The next morning, I began systematic documentation. I photographed every violation in Willowbrook Estates and discovered a clear pattern. Working-class and minority residents faced constant fines, while Veronica's wealthy friends received passes. Then I followed the money. The HOA's beautification fund, which had collected $47,000 over 3 years, was funneled almost entirely into no-bid contracts with her husband's landscaping company for work that barely existed. I quietly mailed copies of the financial records and my findings to every homeowner in the neighborhood. By noon the next day, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. 17 families were ready to join a class action lawsuit. Veronica responded with a certified letter threatening a lien on my property and possible foreclosure if I didn't pay the now $750 fine within 30 days. Instead of removing the tires, I turned every single one into a spectacular desert garden planter. I bought drought-resistant marigolds, barrel cacti, and trailing lantana. By noon the next day, 12 beautiful tire planters lined my driveway, bursting with color and framed by hand-painted signs identifying each plant. The black rubber rings created a striking contrast against explosions of yellow, purple, and green that thrived in the Phoenix heat. Neighbors started stopping to admire them. Kids pointed and laughed. Dorothy offered to help tend the gardens, and soon Miguel donated professional drip irrigation while young Blake added solar lighting. What began as defiance turned into the most beautiful block in the neighborhood. Property values on our street even started climbing. The media caught wind of the story. A local news crew filmed a segment about creative sustainability and fighting HOA overreach. Veronica drove by repeatedly photographing everything, clearly searching for new violations. Then the citations started pouring in. Unlicensed landscaping modifications, excessive garden decorations, noise violations, and even potential rodent habitat. Each one grew more desperate. When code enforcement showed up, the young inspector quickly determined there were no violations after I presented environmental safety reports. But the real turning point came when I discovered the original 1987 HOA covenant. It clearly stated that no fine could exceed the actual documented cost of remediation. Every penalty Veronica had issued for years was legally fraudulent. Even better, Any rule changes required approval from 67% of all homeowners, a threshold she had never met. With help from a former board president who had been driven out years earlier, I built an ironclad case showing over $247,000 in illegal fines and embezzlement. While Veronica escalated, the neighborhood united. More families created their own tire gardens. We held planning parties and turned the street into a vibrant display of community creativity. One night, someone destroyed my gardens, ripping out plants and slashing irrigation lines. Security camera footage clearly showed Veronica in her white tennis outfit vandalizing them at 2 a.m. The vandalism was caught on video and reported to police. The story made the news again, and Veronica had a public meltdown on live television, ranting about certain types of people destroying property values. That was the beginning of her end. A special election was called. 237 residents packed the community center. I presented the evidence of discrimination, financial fraud, and covenant violations. The crowd was stunned. Then an FBI agent stood up and arrested Veronica on the spot for wire fraud, tax evasion, racketeering, and federal housing discrimination violations. The community erupted in applause as she was led away in handcuffs. Dorothy was elected the new HOA president on a platform of transparency and fairness. All illegal fines were refunded. New rules protected homeowner creativity, and tire gardens were officially recognized as environmental innovation. 6 months later, Willowbrook Estates had completely transformed. Veronica was serving 18 months in federal prison. Her schemes had collapsed, and the neighborhood now celebrated monthly community gardens, financial transparency, and real neighborly cooperation. What started with 12 old tires and one arrogant fine had grown into a statewide movement promoting sustainable landscaping and HOA reform. My father's tires now bloom every season as living memorials, surrounded by children learning about desert ecology and neighbors sharing coffee and stories. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's turning someone's attempt to break you into something beautiful that brings everyone together. What would you do if your HOA attacked your family's legacy with a petty fine? Drop a comment below and tell me your worst HOA nightmare. I read every story and often reply with practical advice. If you're facing something similar, remember, document everything, dig up the original covenants, get creative, and never let a bully convince you their power is absolute. Communities are worth fighting for.